Hi guys, Steve Moran here. Welcome to another episode of Foresight TV. I am so excited about my guest today. But before we start that, let me run our intro. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. My team put together that video clip. I love it. I probably more than I should. They did such a nice job of getting it to look kind of like me. So, my guest today is Pilar Carvajal. You had it. I gave it to me. Time. Give it to me. You do it.
Pilar
I'm so
Carvajal.
terrible. Carvajal. There we go. I even practiced it, and I ended up blowing it. And Pilar, you're out of Florida, and you're doing low moderate income senior living. You've been doing it for quite a while, and what I'm really excited about having this conversation is that maybe a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, prior to being hit with the pandemic, there was quite a bit of discussion about the need for the middle market. And there were a few people like you who were saying kind of, you know what, we're actually getting this done. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, your organization, and then we'll just have a conversation.
Well, Steve, it's so great to be here with you. So I've been in the industry for a long time, about 20 years, and I started, I guess I'm a bit of an anomaly in the sense that I started on the other side of the spectrum of senior living. I focused on the affordable side, and we did something very novel at the time, which was to license very large public housing and subsidized housing buildings that already had seniors in place. And we would just license the building, and all of a sudden there were services provided to these individuals that allowed them to literally age in place with the services that they needed. And what I found with these types of models, and I ended up converting about 40 projects across 23 states, is that our mission was to serve the low income senior, but we attracted the middle income senior in very large ways. And so we kind of developed that model and then started incorporating adult daycare centers within these assisted living facilities, and really saw this combination worked very well as an affordable option. Now, in 2016, I decided to take a departure from that business, which was a family business, and I created Innovation Senior Living, which is my current company. And I really wanted to focus on that middle income senior. And funnily enough, the NIC came out with the Forgotten Middle study, and I said, you know what, I could have told you so. And sure enough, I'm so happy to see that the industry is now focused on this demographic.
Terrific. So let's talk a little bit about what projects. How many are you operating now?
We're operating 5, and we are solely focused on the state of Florida. So right now, we are going to be acquiring properties. We've been a third-party management company for all the years that I've been in the industry. Our pivot, thanks to COVID, is acquisitions, and we're going to be acquiring kind of those little bit of a tired property, a mom and pop type operation, and we're going to fold them into a portfolio here in Florida, and then move regionally, probably into Georgia, the Carolinas, probably after we reach about 10 properties.
So let's talk a little bit let's talk about money first. So how do people, so as a sort of middle market, lower market, what's it cost to move in? How is it and how does that work?
So depending on the markets that we're in, so for example, community fees, those are going to be a sliding scale based on the demographic that we're serving. And just like the industry proves, we serve the market that's within the 5-mile radius of that property. So depending on that, we will shift. We will have more or less Medicaid based on that demographic, and we will charge more or less based on a community fee and the individuals that live there. So we start with a community fee that probably ranges between $500 to $1,000. And then we will either have them pay privately if they can afford it. And we're typically between $2,500 to $3,000 a month. And if they qualify for Medicaid, Medicaid will pay probably about half of that. And families can also make contributions. So we're serving a fixed income individual that is presenting their Social Security check as one piece of the equation, and then Medicaid and family are making up the rest.
So how, and this is assisted living, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so so I know as people are watching this, they're going, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. I can't even pay my bills on $3,000 a month, and I haven't even covered my debt service. How are you making that happen?
Well, we're certainly not operating the most luxurious properties out there. I mean, they're not properties that have cost, millions and millions of dollars to build. At this point, we are operating in buildings that are maybe 20 or 30 years old, and we do nice renovations and make them comfortable places. But they're no frills. They are a courtyard Marriott. They're very basic. What's important, though, is the services, is the food, is the staff that we hire, and that's where we focus our attention. The bells and whistles of the grand staircases and all these amenities aren't necessarily important for this population. They want to know that they're going to be cared for, that we're going to be able to provide for them what they need. And for the most part, it's going to be more of a healthcare model than it is a hospitality model.
And are these double occupancy, single occupancy apartments?
Depends. I've operated semi-private, so double occupancies. I've operated friendship suites where they're sharing a bathroom. I've operated studio apartments where they're living privately. It really depends on the building and what we have to operate, what we have, because we're taking over things that are already in place. So in the future, I think that smaller private unit is going to be more attractive than a semi-private accommodation. But for right now, if you're Medicaid, a semi-private unit is pretty par for the course.
Gotcha. And so I guess, is it hard to find residents? I guess maybe that's the next question I have. I mean, when you go out to the marketplace and you say, well, if you have a Social Security check, we can get you in, but oh, by the way, you're going to have to share your room. How do people react to
that? We have no problem. We're serving a population that's largely neglected by the industry. So the demographics are there today, and they're going to be enormous in the future. And what I have found in my experience is that I actually got into the adult daycare assisted living model because I was always full. So I was looking for opportunities to serve more people. So I had a limitation of a building, but I was like, okay, let's see if there's something else I can add here to serve more people and almost create a waiting list of people, but also servicing them at the same time. So like the industry looks to assisted living to memory care as a feeder, for me, the feeder is adult daycare to assisted living.
Gotcha. And so talk to me a little bit about how you do things like food, dining services, and life enrichment.
So we don't have the 5-star chef. We have kind of meat and potatoes, kind of very basic type dining, which is perfectly fine for this population. We make sure that we serve what they want. So if it's a Latino population, it's rice and beans. If it's an Caucasian American population, it's meat and potatoes. We are creating a very basic menu that caters to what that population wants. So our meal program is very simple, and it is basically one time a day. So breakfast is once, lunch and dinner. So we don't have, meals that you can come and eat anytime you want. We're serving one time, and we're serving what's on the menu with a substitute. In terms of life enrichment, we obviously have our programming in place, our activity director, but we utilize a lot of resources in the community. So we'll bring in volunteers. We'll rest very heavily on our partners, on our home health partners, our therapy partners, our doctors. And we will look for ways to bring additional programming that aren't necessarily on our payroll.
Gotcha. Well, it's really interesting. I don't know whether you know this, but way back when I was very young, I did some low income sort of board and care kinds of things, and shared rooms was was a pretty common thing there. And I have since had the opportunity to visit some senior living communities in other countries, in Mexico and in Turkey specifically. And it's very interesting to me that in those countries, it's actually really common to see more than two people in a room, and the and the beds are really close. I mean, there's essentially no personal space in there at all. But there are communities where the socialization becomes is such a big part. The the community. You talked a little bit about doing Hispanic communities. That I would think that in many cases there may be times where it would actually be people would actually prefer that to the isolation. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think a big piece, and it's certainly a lot of the stuff that I've read that you've been saying that rings very true. I mean, what we have to offer is socialization. And that's a lot of what our model does. We don't want people in their units. We want them out together, making friends, enjoying a salsa class or a yoga class or, bingo or whatever it is that they want to do. We listen to them. I always say the resident has the answer. Ask them what they want and then just give them what they want. It's pretty simple. So we always see that the apartment is the place where they go to rest, but that the communal areas is where they're together. And we are constantly pulling residents out and creating programming that's attractive for them so that they can be together. And then I think this other piece about healthcare, a lot of what we do is connect that individual to healthcare. So we are bringing in, as a result of being affordable, we can't have nurses on our payroll. We don't have doctors in that, on the payroll. We have to partner with those community resources out there. And then when they come in, they bring these additional services to us, which means it's not something that we're paying for. So if we need nursing services, home health is coming and helping us out there. We partner with doctors and bring them in. We've brought in telehealth, telemedicine, all these things that have been very normal as a function of trying to keep costs down for us are a lot of things that are now being entertained in the industry as a whole.
So how do you do your marketing and sales?
So a lot of it is typical to the industry. We have very strong relationships in the industry, and we do make friends with a lot of our friends, or make friends with other communities in the area, because many times a daughter is bringing their mother to the best property in the community, but then they see what the price tag is and they can't afford it. And so we make good relationships with all the properties where we operate so that they know if you need a lower cost option, we're right down the street. And they know that we're doing a great job and that they can recommend and refer people to us. And just like we would the other way around, but in all likelihood, it's more of a referral to us because we have a more affordable product.
So yeah, so it's interesting you say that, because it seems like the more upscale senior living communities could be a great referral source for you. So do you have a separate marketing person, or does your administrator, executive director do that? And I have a hidden agenda, not even hidden, I have an agenda in asking that. So.
Well, it depends on the size. So if we can afford that marketing director, we will hire a marketing director. But we have operated without marketing directors and had the administrator function in that role, as well as obviously the administrator for the property. So We get a lot of referrals without necessarily asking for it. We just develop a great reputation wherever we are, and people know that they can refer to us when they have someone that can't afford what they have to offer. And I think that that comes at a great relief for a lot of the higher end properties that need, we all want to feel good and we all want to do good. So if they aren't the right place for someone, being able to refer them to some place where they feel comfortable in doing so, I think that that really works out very well for everybody.
Yeah, so two kind of interesting thoughts. There's some comments I want to get to here in a minute, but two really interesting thoughts to me is I've often felt that when we see these new constructions, these really grand senior living communities with the fancy public areas, menus that look like you've gone to Applebee's or Cheesecake Factory, right? And I've often felt and sensed that so much of that was about appealing to family members who feel guilty about placing their loved one, perhaps, if this is not too crude to say, they feel a little bit like they're putting their loved one in a prison, and so you're going to put them in a nice prison rather than a not prison. And that maybe the family members, that maybe the residents themselves actually don't care that much about it, because for most of them it's going to be more opulent than anything they've ever lived with before. So
exactly.
I don't know.
Exactly. And look, the population that we care for has never spent money like that. They've always been kind of no frills, very cost conscious. Why at the end of their life are they going to just splurge like that, especially if they're a middle income and low income individual? That's not going to be in their DNA. They're going to want to know that their money is going to last as long as they need it to, and they're going to they just want something that's going to do the job. All the bells and whistles mean nothing. Am I going to be well cared for? Is the staff nice? Do I like the food that's on the menu? Do they have things on the activity calendar that I like to do? It's basic stuff. And that's what that I think is, that's our special sauce. I mean, it's just giving that clientele what they want. And it's really a lot of basic things that are given with a lot of love and care.
Yeah, and that's really the cool. So the reason I'd ask about who does your marketing is, when I first started in this business like a million years ago, it was actually fairly rare to see communities have a marketing director. It was something that the executive director, mostly called them administrators back then, right? And that was part of their duties, were to sell and tell the story. And sorry to all you marketing people who are watching this, because I'm not really put you out of a job, but I know, even just to sort of draw a parallel in my organization at Senior Living Foresight, when I'm talking to new sponsors, I just tell the story better than anybody else, because it's, I've walked it and I've lived it and I know it intimately, and I think that's true. So I just, it occurred that might actually be a better model, even for where it's traditionally being done different. So.
And keep in mind, I mean, we are targeting mom and pop operations. So these are properties that have done very well with the owner being the administrator and being the marketing person, and sometimes the cook, and sometimes the housekeeper. We're really like roll up your sleeves type people. I mean, the people that I hire, I'm like, listen, sometimes you're gonna have to jump in and do this or that, and people are happy to do it. They feel like they're part of a big family. It's really, at the end of the day, I've always seen assisted living as home. It should feel like home. It should taste like home. You don't want it to be institutional or like a hotel or a nursing home or anything. It's just, you're moving from your house into your apartment, and we're going to give you services as you need them. If you don't need a full bath and you just need us to turn on the water and put your towel there, that's what we're going to do. But when you need the full bath, we're going to help you with that full bath.
Great. So I want to get to a couple of questions here. So Scott Blakely says fall prevention is really critical. Absolutely agree. Absolutely. That's one of the things that people are looking at. John Gonzalez asked, and I think he probably came on a little late. So this rent includes both care and housing, right? And food and meals. The rent you're talking about.
That's right.
Yeah. And are
Yes.
there any level of care charges at all?
So it depends. Sometimes we do all-inclusive pricing, and sometimes we do level of care pricing. But the rent is still, at a certain level, $1,800, $2,000, and then we're adding levels of care of $300, $600, $900 plus medication management. And we just play with those numbers based on we want to maximize what we can get, taking into consideration the market that we're in. So we'll try different types of pricing until we get it right, but we'll use Medicaid without a problem if we need to or not, But again, I think what we saw with COVID and focusing on this demographic is that we had very secure money. Social Security is not going away, at least not right now. Medicaid, solid money as well. What started to suffer sometimes was the family contributions, but we had the majority of the monies coming in. So, our rent stayed pretty intact.
So, what impact has COVID had on things like occupancy and expenses and that kind of thing for you?
I mean, we have suffered equally. So we've had issues with occupancy. We've had increase in our PPE, but we've been able to manage. I mean, I think that our occupancies have gone up a lot faster than maybe in the industry because of the demographics that we care for. So as soon as we were able to open and serve people, we had a lot of referrals coming in and that pent-up demand that we've been talking about.
So are you back to sort of fullish occupancy?
Pretty much. I mean, I think we're probably between 85 and 90%. So we're usually operating at about 95%, but not quite there yet. I think some of it is also people just are where they are. The families are where they are, and we just have to work through the time to get them comfortable to move back in.
Yep. Well, and I think the other practical thing is that we're in spring break season, right, which impacts families obviously more than the residents. But my guess is that has some impact as well. So let's talk a little bit about, watching this, and most operators that I talk to on a day-to-day basis are really focused on that high end because they feel like that's where the margins are. If somebody decides maybe I ought to try this, how do they get started? How do they figure this out? How do they get started?
So I'm sorry, I missed, what was the question? I'm sorry.
How would if somebody looked at that and said, well, maybe I ought to look at doing a moderate income, lower income senior living, how would they get started with doing that? Any words of advice?
Well, right now so I'll talk specifically to the state of Florida, and hopefully this will resonate in other states. But in Florida, there are specialty licenses. We do no specialty licenses. Okay, so we don't hire nurses. We are very basic in our staffing. We hire CNAs and med techs. Okay, that's a way you make this work economically. Then we really focus on assisted living. We don't do memory care in large part. Now, I do operate properties that have a small component of memory care, but to really make it work best from a financial perspective, you're really solidly in the adult daycare space. I'm sorry, the assisted living space. My recommendation would be to acquire something that hasn't been operating correctly. I think there's a lot of opportunities to do that. And to buildings that maybe are suffering occupancy wise by opening up your market, which is what I typically do. I'm able to fill buildings because I don't have to just go after that high income individual. I can do low income and I can do middle income individuals. That amount of people is much larger. So my recommendation, and which is what we're doing today, is go out and acquire properties. They don't necessarily have to be highly distressed. They have value in them, maybe they have a dip in occupancy or their expenses are too high. We've taken over properties that have specialty licenses and we've taken out the nurses and we've brought it down to a more simple business. And that's how we make it work. In terms of new development, we have developed a prototype that we can build for a moderate amount of money so that we can then serve this same population. It's going to not necessarily be in the most luxurious or most urbanized areas in terms of development. Land has to be bought fairly inexpensively, and then the construction has to be, within $8 to $10 million. Then you can cater to this population because you're not going to have this heavy debt at the end when that construction ends.
Well, I just really like the model in so many respects. I mean, first off, you're serving a population that's underserved. And so, in my do-gooder heart, that just warms my heart that you're being able to serve people who otherwise might not be served or might not be served well. And I love the idea that you ultimately have created a model where your operating costs are a lot less. And it's a simpler model to do, even though it may be, at least in our little ecosystem, it may seem like it's not so, what do I want to say, it doesn't seem as glamorous as what I guess I'm trying to say as a lot of the other things. But at the end of the day, you're changing people's lives and you're creating community. I mean, as you were talking about the ability to get people out, I was thinking back to for a number of years we rented a house on the Oregon coast and would bring in all sorts of family people to have a week just hang out together, and you rent these things sight unseen, and we rented this place that looked really good on the internet, and we got in there, and frankly it was just a dump. And my wife had made all these arrangements, and she was so embarrassed. I mean, the beds were saggy, and everything was just old and creaky. But you know what? Once we sort of got past that initial embarrassment, we didn't care because we were hanging out with family and friends, and it was a lovely, lovely time. And that's what we remember, not how it ends.
It's a great point. And I think that is a great point. And I think just going back to the previous point, Steve, just to mention as well, in terms of other opportunities are conversions. And I've done a lot of them, converting hotels. I did a trailer park conversion once. So you can go out there. Yes, you can go out there and put assisted livings in a lot of different types of places. So okay, I think that's part of.
Back up. I want to hear about trailer park. I want to hear about trailer park assisted living. That sounds cool.
I guess it really just centers around a community center. So everyone lives in their trailer park. Where they get their services is where they come into the center. And that's where we have the food. That's where we set up the offices. That's where we did the medication management. So you can do assisted living in trailer parks as well. And it works just fine.
That is too cool. That is too cool. Do you have a couple more questions for you? Do you have a sense of what your length of stay is?
We're probably between 27 to 30 months. That's pretty typical for us.
I knew it.
Did I answer that right?
Average That's really cool, right? Because I think the average right now for typical assisted living sort of sits in 22, 23 month range, right? And probably some of that is that you tend to get, maybe some of it is that you tend to get residents who need less care, but maybe not. But I would argue that, I mean, it would be, I don't know how you'd research it, but it'd be really interesting to look at, because I suspect a lot of it may be because there's better socialization. Thoughts?
Better socialization. And again, remember, we're partnering with a lot, at least from my perspective, I'm like, I want to care for this person as long as I can. I don't want to be in the business of, oh, you're in, now you're out. So we will work with hospice to keep them at home and let them die at home if they can. Or, we'll look for additional services to help them, age with us. Obviously, we have to live within our licensing regulations, right? And what we are allowed or not allowed to do. I think that some of it is part of that, is that we work really hard to make sure that we care for that person as best and as long as we can. But the socialization piece is absolutely a key piece of it. I mean, I walk into my communities and I'm hugging and I'm kissing everybody and I know who they are. And that's the type of feeling that we have in our properties is you're home and we're here to serve you and care for you. And it's authentic. It really is.
That is really cool. John Gonzalez makes a note that the best marketing reps are your passionate staff. Absolutely, 100% agree with that. In a typical building, what's your mix of non-Medicaid to Medicaid?
It depends. It really depends. So I have operated 100% Medicaid, and then I've operated 10% Medicaid. I adjust to my market. So if the market is 50-50, we'll do 50-50. So it really depends. But we can do 100% or really we don't do no Medicaid, but we can also do a small amount of Medicaid if we're in a market where there's mostly private pay.
Gotcha. And I know with Medicaid, it varies a lot from state to state as to what the rules and the amount of money. I know that in California, we have there's need for a lot more than I don't know what the current number is, something like 10,000, maybe somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000 people are allowed on the Medicaid assisted living waiver program in the whole state, which isn't much. But I know there are other states like Florida where it sounds like it's really terrific. I mean, and it saves the government a ton of money.
It does. And I mean, I know how to do it. So we're able to help our residents get through the process. It's not an easy process, but we can help them and we counsel them. So not only are we helping them, make the decision to move into assisted, we're helping them find the money to pay. And keep in mind, I've also done Section 8 rental subsidies in my assisted livings as well. So Medicaid is a service subsidy, helps pay for services. Section 8 can be used to subsidize rents. So once you start putting all these monies together, sure. Yeah, it works. Absolutely works. So, but those are complicated.
I am sure.
Complicated projects.
Every once in a while, I talk to people who are doing some really cool, complicated stuff. What you're doing is amazing. I bow down to you. It's really, really cool stuff. So if people want to get in touch with you, best way to find you is what, LinkedIn or something else?
LinkedIn's great. I'm there and I'm actively on my LinkedIn. So happy to talk to people that way.
Well, Pilar, thank you so much. This has been so cool. People like you inspire me with the creativity to figure out how to go out and make the world a better place. I'm gonna do just a couple of little sort of showy kinds of things. The first thing I want to do is remind everybody that we have this new texting community where we're giving away bonus content and stuff. The way you join the texting community, text 916-659-5287, the word TV, and you will get one email back that'll ask you for a little more information, get you connected with my phone, and we will be good to go. We send out some bonus content every couple of weeks, and we would love to have you be a part of that. Also, we want to remind you that we're just a little more than a week away from our Evolve 2021 Life Enrichments Conference. We've got amazing speakers, and you can find that information at the Senior Living Foresight. And with that, thanks for watching. And Pilar, thank you for joining us today.
All right. Take care.